Have you ever sat in a room full of people who claimed to love you and felt like every smile was sharpened into a knife? My name is Clara Whitmore. I'm 68 years old, a widow for nearly a decade, and the only thing I've ever wanted was to see my son, Ethan, happy. That night, my birthday night just 2 days before Christmas, was supposed to be a celebration. My friends, my family, the grandbaby on the way. I told myself it would be a new chapter. I was wrong. The banquet hall sparkled with fairy lights, wreaths, and a towering Christmas tree. The air smelled of cinnamon and pine. I had paid for all of it, $15,000 scraped together from years of cutting corners. I told people it was my gift to the family. The truth, I thought, if I gave enough, maybe I would finally stop feeling like an outsider in my own son's life. At first, it seemed worth it. People hugged me, clinked glasses, called me generous. Then Ethan raised his champagne flute. "To my beautiful wife, Vanessa," he said, "and to my mother, Clara, who's always been there for us." Polite applause, harmless enough. But then, Vanessa stood. She looked like something out of a magazine emerald dress, hugging her body, diamond earrings flashing in the light. Her voice dripped sugar as she took the microphone. "I want to say something about Clara," she began. My chest swelled finally, maybe a moment of connection. She's been living with us for months, and I've learned so much from her about family loyalty. Murmurs. My smile froze. Some mothers, Vanessa continued, step back once their sons marry, but not Clara. She's shown me that a mother's job is never really done. She helps with everything, even financially. Isn't that inspiring? At 68, still giving everything she has to support her children? The applause was awkward. Some people clapped, others shifted uncomfortably. My face burned. In one stroke, she had branded me not as the strong woman who raised Ethan alone, but as a needy hanger-on. I forced a laugh, but inside, I felt stripped bare. I wasn't a guest of honor at my own party. I was a prop in Vanessa's performance. Later, as people mingled around the dessert table, I caught the way her friends whispered. "Poor woman," one of them murmured, "must not be able to live on her own anymore." That was the first cut. But the second, the one that twisted deep, came the next morning. I woke to the smell of coffee, not mine. I shuffled into the kitchen of what Vanessa loved to call our house. There she was, radiant even in silk pajamas, and beside her, a man in a crisp suit, leather briefcase on the table. Clara, Vanessa said brightly, "This is Mr. Lewis from Sterling Legal. We need to go over some paperwork." My stomach tightened. Paperwork. The word always sounds harmless until it's not. What kind of paperwork, I asked, pouring myself coffee with hands that only trembled a little. Vanessa smiled, wide and cold. "Ethan and I have been talking. We want to make sure you're taken care of as you get older. We've already arranged a place at Sunset Manor, lovely assisted living, 24-hour care activities, friends your age, and of course, the house paperwork needs updating. Cleaner if it's just in our names." The cup hit the table harder than I meant. "My name's stays," I said, flatly. Vanessa tilted her head like a patient nurse dealing with a confused patient. "Oh, Clara, don't be stubborn. You've been forgetful, misplacing things. Ethan worries constantly. This arrangement is for your safety. Forgetful." The words slapped harder than any hand. I stared at the notary shuffling pages as if this were all routine. One night of humiliation wasn't enough. Vanessa wanted the encore, my dignity, my home, my independence. And Ethan, My Ethan was nowhere. I stared at Vanessa across the kitchen table, and something inside me snapped. For months, I had ignored the little digs, the subtle corrections, the way she spoke about me in the third person, as though I weren't in the room. But this, bringing a notary into my home, like I was some senile woman who wouldn't notice the walls closing in. "Where's Ethan?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "At the gym," she replied smoothly. "He finds all this financial talk stressful. Better if I handle it, of course." My son, the boy I raised on double shifts, the man whose education I worked myself half dead to pay for, had once again ducked behind his wife's skirts. Just like when he was 12 and wanted a bike, but wrote me a note instead of asking out loud. Just like when he wrecked his first car and had his girlfriend call me with the news. Always avoiding the hard parts. Always letting someone else do the dirty work. I sipped my coffee bitter on my tongue. "So, let me get this straight," I said. "I hand over my rights to the house I helped buy, and in exchange, you tuck me away in a facility like an old sweater. Gone out of style." Mr. Lewis cleared his throat. "Mrs. Whitmore, you'd also be guaranteed 1 year of full coverage at Sunset Manor. After that, well arrangements can be discussed. 1 year. 1 year of being bought out of my own life." Vanessa leaned forward. Her hands' folded nails painted a perfect holiday red. "Think of it as peace of mind, Clara. You'll be safe. We'll have security. Everyone wins." I almost laughed. Everyone but me. That night at the banquet hall replayed in my head the polite claps, the sideways glances, the whispers. I remembered how I had smiled through it all, pretending it didn't matter. Pretending the humiliation wasn't burning a hole straight through me. I thought about the years I'd spent serving tables at the country club so Ethan could afford college textbooks. The nights I'd gone without heating so I could tuck away a few extra dollars in savings. The afternoons when I walked miles to save bus fare, all to scrape together the down payment that now sat under Vanessa's manicured thumb. And here she was, recasting my sacrifice as dependency. Twisting my generosity into weakness. I set my cup down with deliberate care. "I'll need time to think," I said. Her smile flickered. Just for a second, the mask slipped, and I saw the steel beneath. "Clara, Mr. Lewis has other appointments today. It would be so much easier if we handled this now. Easier for you, maybe," I shot back. "But I'm not signing anything today." The notary looked relieved, gathering his papers. Vanessa's jaw tightened. As they left the kitchen, my eyes caught the reflection in the window, me standing small in a room I had helped build, yet treated like an unwelcome guest. My chest ached not just with anger, but with a sharp, humiliating grief. Because the truth settled heavy in my bones, the celebration had never been for me. It had been a stage my birthday turned into a spotlight for Vanessa's performance. And Ethan, my own son, had played his role by vanishing when I needed him most. That night alone, in the spare bedroom that was supposed to be temporary, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I replayed Vanessa's words over and over, forgetful, dependent, almost 70. Almost 70. As if 3 digits defined me. As if I were a piece of fruit with an expiration date stamped across my forehead. Anger surged hot in my veins. Let them think I was weak. Let them think I was cornered. They had no idea that I had been preparing for battles long before Vanessa ever walked into my son's life. And this time, I wasn't about to lose. Morning light spilled through the blinds like a cruel spotlight. I hadn't slept. My head pounded. My heart raced, and still I went through the motions shower comb cardigan. My late husband used to say, Clara, armor comes in many forms. Sometimes it's just a pressed shirt and steady hands. So I armored up. When I walked into the kitchen, Vanessa was already there, radiant as ever, slicing strawberries into a porcelain bowl as though nothing had happened yesterday. Her smile was the kind that could fool strangers, but not me. I'd seen what hid behind it. "Good morning, Clara," she sang. "I hope you rested. We have a busy day." Busy day. The words made my stomach twist. The table was set not for breakfast, but for war. Manila folders stacked neatly, pens aligned, and sitting in the middle was a thick packet of documents with sticky notes marking where my trembling hands were supposed to sign. Mr. Lewis was back, his briefcase propped at his feet. He gave me the kind of polite nod people reserve for patients in hospital gowns, respectful, but distant, already imagining me behind closed doors. I poured myself coffee, slowly making them wait. Let them feel the silence. Clara Vanessa said sweetly, "We've reviewed everything again. This is really the best path forward. You'll be comfortable at Sunset Manor, and Ethan and I can focus on the baby without constant worry." "The house," I said, my voice low. "You want it in your names only. It's cleaner that way." She didn't even flinch. "And my $15,000. Her laugh tinkled like sleigh bells. "Oh, Clara, that was your gift to us. Think of it as the down payment on your grandson's future." Gift. The word burned like acid. I remembered the envelope of cash I'd pulled from my savings fingers, shaking as I handed it to Ethan. I'd called it a loan. He'd nodded solemnly, and Vanessa had kissed my cheek. "Thank you for believing in us," she'd whispered. And now here she was, rewriting history in broad daylight. Mr. Lewis cleared his throat. "Mrs. Whitmore, these documents formalize your transition to assisted living. In exchange, your son and daughter-in-law take on full responsibility for the mortgage and property. It's quite standard in situations like this." Standard. Was it standard to erase a mother's sacrifice with a stroke of a pen? I forced myself to sit, folding my hands over the table so they wouldn't see them tremble. "Why now?" I asked. Vanessa blinked, lashes fluttering. "Because you've been slipping. Slipping." She leaned closer, her voice soft, but loaded like a gun. The forgotten appointments, the misplaced keys, the way you repeat questions. "Ethan and I have been worried." Her words cut deeper than any insult. She wasn't just taking my money. She was rewriting my very mind brick by brick until the world would see me the way she wanted, fragile, fading, irrelevant. The notary shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the papers into the fire and watch them curl and blacken. Instead, I sipped my coffee, the bitterness grounding me. "You'll like Sunset Manor." Vanessa pressed on her, smile tightening. "It's decorated for Christmas. They even have carolers on weekends. People your own age to talk to. People my own age. As if I were a relic in a museum." I set my cup down hard enough to rattle the saucer. "I'm not signing today," I said. The room went still. Vanessa's smile cracked for the first time. "You're not signing." Vanessa's voice was still soft, but the edge beneath it was sharp as broken glass. I leaned back in my chair. "That's what I said. Her smile faltered, then froze again like a mask she refused to take off. Clara, you're being unreasonable. Mr. Lewis came all this way. Ethan and I already put down the deposit for Sunset Manor. It's embarrassing if you back out now. Embarrassing. The word scraped across my nerves. My future wasn't a social faux pas. It was my life. Mr. Lewis shuffled in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. Perhaps we should allow Mrs. Whitmore more time to... No, Vanessa cut him off, voice icy. If we drag this out, it'll only make things harder for her. It's better to resolve everything today. Her for her landed like a slap. Not for me. For her. For Ethan. For their shiny future with a house that was half mine and a bank account padded with my savings. I took a breath, steadying myself. Do you know what I hear, Vanessa? I hear you saying, this is easier for you. You want my signature. You want my silence. And you want me out of your way before the baby arrives. Her eyes narrowed. That's not fair. Fair. My voice cracked, rising with the fury I had swallowed for months. Was it fair when you stood at my birthday celebration and dressed up my sacrifices as weakness? Was it fair when you turned me into a spectacle in front of your friends? Was it fair when you moved me out of my own apartment under the guise of safety so you could tighten the noose around me? The mask slipped. For just an instant, the sweetness drained from her face, leaving something cold, calculating, reptilian. You've been forgetful, Clara, she said flatly. Everyone's noticed it. You don't want Ethan to worry, do you? He's already under enough stress. Maybe it's best if you let us handle things now. There it was. The weapon she'd been sharpening in secret, the story of a fading mind. I forced a smile, though my stomach churned. Funny. If I'm so forgetful, why did I remember to keep the original deed? Why did I remember the loan agreement with both your signatures? Why did I remember to have my lawyer add a competency clause to that power of attorney? You slipped in front of me 6 months ago. Her eyes widened just a flicker, but I saw it. Saw the panic crawl through the cracks in her perfect exterior. Excuse me, Mr. Lewis asked carefully. Competency clause. 2 independent physicians must declare me incompetent before that paper has any power, I said, turning to him. Until then, I manage my own life. Not Ethan, not Vanessa. Me. Vanessa's lips pressed into a thin line. Her hands, perfectly manicured, curled into claws against the table. You're twisting everything. Ethan will never forgive you if you ruin this for us. Do you want to be responsible for destroying your own son's marriage? There it was, the final card. Guilt. The oldest trick in the book. I stood slowly, pushing back my chair, letting the legs screech against the hardwood. I've carried Ethan's happiness on my shoulders for 42 years. I nearly broke my back doing it. If his marriage can only survive by stripping me of my dignity and my home, then maybe it deserves to crumble. Silence. Thick, suffocating. Mr. Lewis cleared his throat again, clutching his briefcase like a lifeline. Perhaps it would be best to reconvene another day. Vanessa didn't answer. She couldn't. Her eyes were daggers, her jaw rigid, but her silence told me everything I had struck something deep. As they left, I watched her heels click across the floor, every step full of rage she couldn't quite disguise. I knew then this wasn't over. It had only just begun. The house was quiet after Vanessa and Mr. Lewis left, but it wasn't peace. It was the silence of a battlefield, once the soldiers retreat to reload. I could feel it in my bones she wasn't done. She'd be back, and next time she wouldn't come with polite smiles. She'd come with sharpened claws. I sat in the spare bedroom, the one she liked to call your little nook, and stared at the walls. My eyes landed on the closet where I'd hidden the fireproof box. Vanessa thought she'd won by moving it to their bedroom. She thought safe meant out of Clara's reach. But she forgot one thing. I raised Ethan alone. I survived 3 decades of bills, debt collectors, and landlords who'd sell their souls for an extra month's rent. I learned to hide things better than a magician. On my knees, I dragged out the shoebox I'd disguised under old blankets. Inside, my treasures: folded documents, canceled checks, a battered notebook. Evidence, proof, my arsenal. The first paper I unfolded was the deed, my name, right there beside Ethan's. I traced the ink with my finger, steadying my breath. Proof that half this house was mine, no matter what lies Vanessa whispered. Next, the canceled check, $15,000 memo line scrawled in my own handwriting: down payment loan, not gift, loan. She could twist words, but she couldn't twist ink. And then the jewel in my crown, the power of attorney. Vanessa thought she had slipped a noose around my neck months ago when she begged me to sign just in case something happens. But I had insisted on adding a clause. 2 independent physicians. No diagnosis, no power. That meant as long as I was breathing and thinking her leash was useless. I almost laughed out loud. For months, she'd been building a case against me. Clara's forgetful, Clara loses track, Clara repeats herself. And all the while, I had been building a case against her. I opened my notebook, the one she'd dismissed as Grandma's diary. Page after page, I'd logged every slight, every setup. March 12th. She said I left the stove on. I'd only used the toaster. April 3rd. Claimed I forgot dinner plans. She'd canceled that morning. April 18th. Told neighbors I confused days. I was recovering from the flu. Each entry was a brick in the wall I was building against her lies. And then my ace. An email printout. I'd stumbled across it when Ethan left his laptop open one night. Vanessa's words, black and white, sharp as a knife. We need to move faster on the Clara situation. She's asking too many questions about the money. I pressed the page to my chest, my hands trembling, not with fear, but with fury. They thought they were playing chess moving pieces while I slept, but they hadn't realized I'd been setting my board long before they learned the rules. That evening, Vanessa waltzed into the kitchen's silk robe, fluttering phone glued to her ear. She didn't notice me at first, sitting at the table with my notebook open. When she finally looked up, her smile froze. "What's that?" she asked. "Just some notes," I said lightly. "You know how forgetful I am. Can't trust my memory these days." Her eyes narrowed. She didn't like the way I said it. Didn't like that my smile looked more like a challenge than surrender. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her. And oh, how sweet it felt. Vanessa lowered herself into the chair across from me, folding her arms like a queen descending to address a peasant. Notes, she repeated, her voice syrupy, but her eyes sharp. About what Clara... I flipped a page slowly, deliberately, so she could see the neat rows of dates and descriptions. Oh, just little things. Like the time you told Ethan I'd left the stove on when I'd only used the toaster. Or when you said I'd forgotten dinner plans that you yourself canceled. Her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "You're being dramatic. People misremember things all the time. Do they?" I tilted my head, meeting her gaze. What about April 18th, when you told the neighbor I was confused about what day it was I had the flu Vanessa? You left that part out. Her cheeks flushed, and for the first time she didn't have an immediate comeback. She was calculating, searching for a new angle. You're paranoid, she said finally, keeping little notebooks about imagined slights. That's not normal, Clara. It makes you sound unstable. I smiled. Unstable, maybe, but thorough. I reached into the folder and slid a sheet of paper across the table. The deed. My name in bold letters side by side with Ethan's. Her hand twitched, but she didn't touch it. Do you know what this is? I asked. It's the house you keep calling yours. But it isn't. Half of it is mine. Always has been. Vanessa leaned back, crossing her arms tighter. That can be fixed with a signature. I laughed, sharp and humorless. Fixed. You mean stolen? And I'm not signing away anything. She tried again, softer this time, her mask slipping back into place. Clara, come on. You don't need the stress. Ethan and I are building a family. Don't you want your grandson to grow up secure? Why make this difficult? Difficult. My voice rose, fueled by months of swallowed fury. You humiliated me in front of everyone I know. You twisted my sacrifices into weakness. And now you sit here daring to tell me I'm the one being difficult. Her lips pressed thin. If Ethan has to choose between you and me, you'll lose. He's my husband now. My loyalty, my future, my family. I pulled out the canceled check next and laid it down between us. $15,000. Loan. Written in ink. Does your family include stealing from me because this says otherwise? Her eyes darted over the paper, then back to me. That's not. And this I cut in, sliding the printout of her email across the table, is the proof you're not just manipulative. You're careless. You wrote that you needed to handle the Clara situation before I asked too many questions. You may have Ethan fooled Vanessa, but you're not half as clever as you think. The silence between us thickened, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. Vanessa's face drained of color, then reddened with fury. You went through my private emails, she hissed. I leaned forward. The same way you went through my purse, the same way you rifled through my papers, twisting them to fit your story. Difference is, I found truth. You found lies. Her mask cracked then fully and violently. You selfish old woman, she spat. Do you have any idea what you're doing? You're tearing apart Ethan's marriage, destroying his peace, making him choose. I slammed my palm on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. No, Vanessa. You are tearing this family apart. You with your lies. You with your greed. You with your smug little speeches about loyalty while you bleed me dry. She recoiled, startled by the venom in my voice. For once, I wasn't the polite widow, the generous mother, the woman who smiled through humiliation. For once, she saw me as I truly was a fighter. And I could tell it terrified her. Vanessa didn't leave the kitchen. She sat there, seething, her nails tapping against the wood like a countdown to something darker. Then she leaned forward, eyes gleaming with a cruelty I hadn't seen before. You think you're clever, Clara? She whispered. You think waving papers in my face makes you safe. But do you really believe Ethan will stand by you once I tell him what's in your purse? My stomach lurched. What are you talking about? She smiled slow and venomous. The pills. The Xanax bottle I found. Not prescribed to you. You've been hiding them, haven't you? Taking them in secret? Do you know what that looks like? Addiction? Erratic behavior? Mental decline. For a moment, the room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table, heart pounding. I remembered those pills. Not mine. Sarah Martinez's my neighbor, who had begged me to pick them up before she moved to Phoenix. I'd forgotten to return them in the chaos of her leaving. Vanessa saw the recognition in my face and smiled wider. Oh, don't bother with excuses. Sarah's gone, remember? No one to back up your little story. All Ethan has is his loving wife worried about his poor, confused mother, popping pills she shouldn't. You wouldn't dare, I hissed. I already have, she said coolly. I've been documenting everything. The trembling hands, the sudden outbursts, the paranoia. Combine that with the unprescribed medication, and Ethan has more than enough to file for guardianship. And once that happens, Clara, you don't just lose the house. You lose everything. Your finances, your choices, your freedom. One signature from a judge, and you'll be nothing but a ward of your son. I froze. Guardianship. Not just assisted living. Not just stealing a house. She was planning to strip me of my entire life, turn me into a puppet she could control with court papers and a sympathetic smile. You monster, I whispered. Vanessa shrugged, feigning innocence. Monster, no. Just a wife protecting her husband from a manipulative mother. Just a mother to be ensuring her child grows up in a stable home. I slammed my fist on the table so hard the coffee mug rattled. Stable. You call this stable? Gaslighting me, twisting my words, humiliating me in front of friends. You don't want stability, Vanessa. You want control. Her face twisted, the mask completely gone now. And what if I do? What if I'm tired of living in the shadow of some bitter old widow who refuses to let go of her son? Ethan belongs to me. His future belongs to me. And so does this house. The venom in her words sliced through me, but underneath the rage was something else, clarity. I leaned in, lowering my voice to a deadly calm. You've underestimated me, Vanessa. For months you've been building a case against me, but I've been building one against you. Notes, contracts, emails, evidence. Enough to make the sheriff's department salivate. She laughed, sharp and cruel. Evidence means nothing if Ethan won't believe you. Who's he going to trust, his pregnant wife or the mother he already thinks is slipping? For a heartbeat, I faltered. Ethan, my boy. The thought of him looking at me with pity, with suspicion, was almost worse than losing the house. Almost. But then the fury surged again, hotter, steadier. I straightened, locking eyes with her. Then we'll see what happens when the law gets involved. Because, Vanessa, you can poison Ethan's ear all you want. But in a courtroom, facts speak louder than lies. For the first time, she blinked. Just once. A tiny crack in her armor. And in that crack, I saw my opening. At 1:45 p.m. sharp, the doorbell rang. I knew the sound would echo in my bones for the rest of my life. Mr. Lewis stood there again, briefcase in hand, his expression carefully neutral. Vanessa glided to the door like a hostess, welcoming guests, but her eyes glittered with triumph. Come in, she said, all honey. Clara's ready now. Ready. She thought I had spent the morning pacing, in fear, wringing my hands, waiting to surrender. She had no idea. I sat at the kitchen table, my purse at my side folder, tucked neatly inside. When they entered, I smiled. Not the brittle smile of a cornered woman, but the calm smile of someone who has already won. Mrs. Whitmore. Mr. Lewis began sliding the papers toward me. This will finalize your transition to Sunset Manor. If you could just... Actually, I interrupted, my voice cutting sharp through the room. I'd like to discuss something else. Vanessa froze mid-step. Clara, we've been over this. No, I said firmly. You've been over this. I've been listening, and now it's my turn. I pulled the manila folder from my purse and spread its contents across the table like a dealer laying down a royal flush. The loan agreement. The deed with my name. The competency clause in the power of attorney. And finally, the email. Mr. Lewis leaned forward, scanning the documents. His face went pale. These appear legitimate. Of course they're legitimate, I snapped. And do you know what else is legitimate? Mr. Lewis, elder financial abuse statutes. 10 years in prison and restitution for every penny stolen. I spoke with Detective Ramirez this morning. He was very interested in Vanessa's little scheme. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You called the police. Of course I did. I leaned forward, eyes blazing. You thought you could humiliate me, erase me, rewrite my life. But while you were busy whispering lies about my memory, I was writing everything down. Every slight, every manipulation, every scheme. And now the law knows too. Mr. Lewis shoved his papers back into his briefcase as though they were on fire. I was told this was a voluntary arrangement. By whom, I demanded. Did you speak to me directly? Or did you just take Vanessa's word that I was incompetent? He swallowed hard. Mrs. Whitmore, I think I should remove myself from this matter. You do that, I said, my smile razor sharp. And when the sheriff's department calls, I suggest you tell them exactly how you were misled. Otherwise, you'll be standing beside Vanessa in the defendant's chair. The man bolted for the door, muttering something about liability insurance. The silence left behind was suffocating. Vanessa stood rigid, her face red and blotchy, her hands shaking. Then she broke. You don't understand, she hissed, tears streaking down her face. We're drowning in debt. Ethan's job barely covers the mortgage. The baby's coming. I needed this house. I needed security. You needed my life, I shot back. And you were willing to steal it. Her sobs turned to rage. You selfish, bitter old woman. You'd rather ruin your son's marriage than let go of control. You'd rather see us suffer than step aside gracefully. I rose to my feet, my voice steady as stone. No, Vanessa. I'd rather see my son face the truth than live in the shadow of a liar. And I'd rather lose his affection than lose myself. For the first time since she'd entered my life, Vanessa had no words, only silence. And in that silence, I knew the war was no longer hers to win. The knock came at dawn, 3 sharp raps that cut through the stillness of the house like a judge's gavel. Vanessa had been pacing since midnight, her eyes red, her hair tangled. Ethan wasn't home, of course he wasn't. He'd fled to his friend's couch rather than face the fallout. So when the doorbell rang again, she froze, then darted toward the mirror, trying to smooth her face into something presentable. I didn't move. I just sat at the kitchen table, coffee steaming in my cup, waiting. Mrs. Vanessa Whitmore. The voice on the porch was steady, official, and merciless. Sheriff's Department. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of elder financial abuse fraud and attempted coercion. The color drained from her face. She looked at me, eyes wide with disbelief, as if I had summoned hell itself to the doorstep. Clara, she whispered, you didn't, but I had. Two uniformed deputies stepped inside their presence, filling the room with authority no smile could disarm. One read her rights, the other clicked cold metal around her wrists. This is a mistake, Vanessa screamed, thrashing against their grip. I was protecting her. She's unstable, she's confused, I stood slowly, letting every ounce of fury I'd buried rise to the surface. Save it for the judge, I said evenly. He'll love to hear how a pregnant woman plotted to steal her mother-in-law's house while calling it protection. She lunged toward me, eyes wild, but the deputy pulled her back. You don't understand, she shrieked. We needed the house, the money Ethan promised. Ethan promised nothing, I cut in coldly. You whispered in his ear, but you never owned his soul, and now you won't own my house either. Her cries echoed down the hallway as they dragged her out, her silk robe trailing like a fallen banner. Neighbors peeked from their windows, drawn by the flashing patrol lights. The perfect Vanessa queen of appearances was paraded into the back of a cruiser with mascara running down her cheeks. And me, I felt no triumph. Just a raw, trembling relief that justice had finally kicked down the door. Later that morning, Ethan called. His voice was hollow-breaking. Mom? What happened? What happened, I said, is that your wife tried to erase me. She called it care. I call it theft. The law calls it a felony. There was silence on the line. Then a ragged sob. She says you set her up, that you hate her, that you've been plotting against her. Plotting? I almost laughed. I've been surviving. There's a difference. Mom, she's carrying my child, Ethan whispered. Do you have any idea what this means for us? Yes, I said softly, my throat tightening. It means you'll have to raise that child knowing the woman you married is a criminal. It means you'll have to decide if you want your daughter to grow up learning manipulation instead of love. His sobs deepened, and for a moment, the weight of 42 years pressed on my chest. My boy broken blind betrayed. But he wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man standing at the crossroads of truth and denial. And this time, I couldn't walk him across. 6 months later, I stood in the county courthouse watching Vanessa shuffle forward in an orange jumpsuit, wrists bound, her hair dull without the army of stylists she once relied on. She pleaded guilty to 3 counts of elder financial abuse. Her voice cracked when she spoke, but the judge didn't flinch. Mrs. Whitmore, he said sternly, your actions show a calculated pattern of manipulation and fraud. This court sentences you to 18 months in state prison, followed by probation and full restitution to the victim. 18 months. Not nearly enough for the damage she had caused, but enough to remind her that lies and greed have consequences. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I simply breathed, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders after months of being painted as fragile, forgetful, and weak. After the sentencing, Ethan met me outside. His face was pale, lined with grief that had aged him 10 years. In his arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in pink. Mom, he said softly, meet Emma. I reached out with trembling hands, and the world fell away. She was perfect, dark hair, curious eyes, a little fist that gripped my finger with astonishing strength. She deserves better than the mess we made. Ethan whispered, tears sliding down his cheeks. I failed you, Mom. I failed her too. I touched his face, the same face I'd kissed when he was a child. No, Ethan. You made mistakes, but you're here now. That's what matters. You get to choose what kind of man you'll be, what kind of father you'll be. He nodded, his shoulders shaking. I don't want to be like her. I want Emma to know honesty, integrity. I want her to know you. And so, for the first time in months, hope bloomed. Ethan sold the house, leaving behind the poisoned walls Vanessa had tried to claim. He rented a small place just 3 blocks from my apartment. Twice a week, he brought Emma over for dinner. We'd sit on my little balcony while she lay on a blanket at our feet, kicking and cooing, the evening air filled with laughter instead of lies. Sometimes Patricia, Vanessa's mother, came too. Strange how betrayal had forged an unexpected friendship. Over tea, she told me stories about her granddaughter, and we promised that no matter what Vanessa had done, Emma would be raised surrounded by love, not manipulation. One spring afternoon, Emma took her first steps across my living room floor. Her wobbly legs carried her straight into my arms, and I felt tears spill down my cheeks. Behind her, Ethan clapped, grinning for the first time in what felt like forever. That night after they left, I sat with pen and paper and began a letter to Emma. A letter she would read years later when she was old enough to understand. I wrote about truth, about dignity, about how love is never control and sacrifice is never weakness. I wrote about Vanessa not to shame her, but to warn Emma that charm without integrity is poison. And I wrote about fighting back even when the world tells you you're too old, too tired, too fragile. Because the truth is, I wasn't fragile. I was forged. And as I signed my name at the bottom of that letter, I smiled. Vanessa had tried to erase me. Instead, she had reminded me of who I was. A woman who doesn't back down, a mother who still has fire in her bones, a grandmother who will leave behind not just money or property, but a legacy of resilience. Sometimes justice looks like handcuffs. Sometimes it looks like a baby's first steps. For me, it was both, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. You know, looking back, this wasn't just about money or a house. It was about dignity. Too often in these family drama stories, the elderly are painted as weak, as if we've already handed over our voices with the passing years. But this is one of those true stories that proves the opposite. We are still strong, still sharp, still capable of fighting back when people mistake kindness for weakness. What happened with Vanessa taught me one of life's hardest life lessons. Even your own family can betray you when greed takes root. But it also reminded me of something powerful, that sometimes justice doesn't look like revenge. It looks like freedom. The freedom to live on your own terms, to be seen as more than just a burden, to leave behind a legacy of resilience. And maybe that's why people connect so deeply with these grandma revenge stories. Because they're not really about revenge, they're about reclaiming your worth when others try to take it away. If this story touched you, please subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories, true stories, and grandma stories. Leave a comment and share where you're watching from. I'd love to know. And if you've ever faced something similar, don't be afraid to share your voice. Your story matters. Most of all, remember, this age doesn't erase your power, it sharpens it. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say no.